They also had a system of social stratification, which did help to control people. And one of the things that makes the Aztec state very different from pretty much every other ancient state, at least as far as we can tell, is that it was possible to move through the social strata. So that's a way to control people, right? It's like dangling a carrot out in front of people. Like if you're good in war, you can move up the social ladder because warriors had such high status within Aztec society. So anyways, the social status was shown in dress. According to Spanish accounts, if you were caught in dress that you weren't supposed to be in, you could be executed. Again, you could move through the social ranks via military prowess and also donating sacrificial victims. The emperor was the Tlatoani. He ruled with a council of 4, usually brothers and sons and uncles. There's a male lineage ruling up there. There were lesser kings that ruled large cities, and they all sent tribute up to the emperor himself. The Pipiltin were the nobles. There were commoners, and those were artisans, merchants, farmers. There were some lower class commoners. They were the Mayakul. They're basically serfs, and then there's the Tlacotin, who were slaves. But the interesting thing about the Tlacotin is that you could buy your way out. So, and even if you had kids while you were in your period of slavery, they were free. So it wasn't something that was inherited, unlike the slavery system that was in the United States. Another kind of cool thing about the Mexicas, they actually had schools. And all youth went to schools, whether you were a noble or whether you were a commoner. It's just the types of things you learned were different. So if you were like a male going to school, and boys and girls both went to school, but if you were a noble male, you learned how to be a warrior. And if you were not, if you were a commoner, you might learn trade and so forth. So again, it's just kind of incredible to me that they actually set up these schools and everybody went. The arts, evidently, from all accounts, the Aztec were really into the arts. Poetry, music, dance. We don't necessarily understand all their metaphor. Like a jade skirt is actually a metaphor for water. But you got to think about their local environment and what is it going to be reflecting. So anyways, lots of different arts, lots of different kinds of crafts. So here's some dancing. And again, very elaborate, evidently wildly colorful costumes. We have sculpture. So this is the famous serpent mosaic. We have statuary. Here's the flower god. Here's a coyote. So again, just another type of sculpture. Obsidian. This is a kind of famous sacrificial knife that was found. And feather working. So here we have the feathered serpent actually made out of feathers. So skilled artisans. Again, we have this huge population on a lake that not all of the water is actually potable. Some of it's quite brackish, but one of the things that the Aztec did to feed this enormous population is they created these things called chinampas. And these are basically like little mini islands. So they would actually dredge up stuff from the bottom of the lake and just continue to pile it up until it made this like little island. And those are incredibly fertile, so they could be planted over and over and over again. These are still actually being used today. A lot of people leave the city on Sundays, evidently, and go out and boat around the old Aztec chinampas. And the Maya also used a similar thing. Of course, most people, when they think of the Aztec, they think of human sacrifice, and it does seem like the Aztec took it to new heights. Tens of thousands of people sacrificed by the Aztec. One account claims that when they were dedicating the temple to Huitzilopochtli, that 20,000 people were sacrificed. My question has always been, how do you keep 20,000 people in a line to be sacrificed? So again, it could have been hallucinogenics, could have been a number of things, could have been that they were just starved and too weak to try to get away. Who knows? But here are some drawings of Aztec sacrifice. I guess I did not put the slide in for this. I apologize. The purpose is, and these can apply to most Mesoamerican societies, sacrifice was performed for ascension rituals. So anytime a new king came into power. Temple dedications. Uh, Most Mesoamerican societies believed that it was absolutely necessary to spill human blood because that's how the gods maintained their nourishment. In fact, Huitzilopochtli demanded human hearts from the Aztec people, and it was also a way to placate gods. So if there was a drought or something, you have a sacrificial ceremony to hopefully make the gods feel better. The victims could have been anybody: slaves, captured warriors, tributes. They often did sacrifice their own people, but those were primarily for really special occasions. So if somebody got to impersonate a deity for like an entire year, was feted, had all the wine and women he wanted, and then in this big sacrificial ceremony at the end was killed, it was considered a great honor because here you are, you're being kind of the living embodiment of this major god for an entire year. So those were only Mexica. Okay, so the conquest. Beginning of the end of the Aztec Empire occurs when Cortez sails from Cuba and lands in Mesoamerica, and that happens in AD 1519. So the leader of the Aztec, or the emperor at this time, is Montezuma. Montezuma had been having a series of dreams that somebody was going to be coming, that bad things were going to be happening. This also, everything that Cortez was doing kind of coincided with the Quetzalcoatl myth, the feathered serpent myth, where Quetzalcoatl was actually also a name of one of the rulers of the Toltec, who was evidently banished at some point, left to the east, was expected to come back at a particular time, which was forecast, and it just so happened to be the time when Cortez arrived. Talk about your lucky coincidences. And so people believed that Cortez was the reincarnation of the god. This didn't last very long, and some accounts say Montezuma wasn't really sure that Cortez was Quetzalcoatl, but thought he better hedge his bets and invited him into the city and fed him and so forth, just on the off chance. But it didn't take them very long to figure out that no, he wasn't Quetzalcoatl and he wasn't a deity, because they were demanding all sorts of stuff: gold, food, anything you can possibly think of. Cortez also, I forgot to mention, had a red beard, and that was also part of the myth that Quetzalcoatl would have this red hair. But anyways, Cortez is welcomed into Tenochtitlan, is wined and dined. Within a very short period of time, Cortez puts Montezuma under house arrest, and that kind of begins the siege of Tenochtitlan. All accounts, it was a quite vicious battle. One of the problems here, and this is actually something that most peoples in the America ran up against, is that their concept of war was a little bit different than the Spanish concept of war. Sorry about that. For the Aztec, it was primarily a way to gain goods, right, and get sacrificial victims. So in general, killing in and of itself during the battle wasn't the main goal. Unlike the Spanish, just the opposite. You kill your enemy. So at first, the Aztec are able to run the Spanish out of the city. Part of that had to do with they were simply outnumbered. There were only about 500 Spanish and a few horses. But in Cortez is actually wounded in this particular battle. So the Spanish retreat, and once Cortez heals, he starts again on the siege of Tenochtitlan. As he's heading back, he actually gains a lot of allies along the way, because a lot of people are tired of sending these big tributes up to the capital city. So by the time he reaches Tenochtitlan again, he's got about 70,000 native allies, including the Tlaxcalans. So here you have the Aztec city is totally besieged and cut off from all of their supplies. Remember, no natural supplies on the island itself. Everything has to be brought in. So the siege resulted in starvation and disease, and of course, lack of water is going to kill people relatively quickly, and the Aztec simply couldn't hold out. There was too many people, not enough supplies, and outgunned. So that is kind of the end of